Apologies for that. The meeting is being broadcast live and a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. Please be aware that this meeting is being transcribed only for the purpose of producing the minutes. This transcript will be deleted once the committee has approved the minutes, and the transcript should not be downloaded by anyone other than Democratic Services. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings, but I've had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you wish to speak. May I remind members that as per statutory guide made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending the meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the officers and members who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of this meeting. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you are not talking. Please do not interrupt discussions until you have been notified of your intention to speak and you have been invited to do so. Moving on to the agenda. Item Agenda 1, welcome and apologies. Niall, do we have any apologies?
Yes, morning, Councillor. We have apologies from Councillor Linda Clarkson, Carl Gordon, Gaynor James, David Williams and the Executive Member Peter Jones.
Thank you, Niall. Declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations with regards to the items we are scrutinising today? No? Okay, agenda item 3, the minutes of the 13th of the 11th, 25. Members, a reminder that these are the minutes of the meeting of the previous meeting where the committee scrutinised the Community and Wellbeing Strategy Library Supplementary Chapter. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise in relation to these minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. Okay, agenda item 4, action sheet. Rebecca, could you run through the action sheet, please?
Thank you, Chair. There was only one action on the action sheet, and that was with regards to the recommendations from the last meeting, which members have all received the responses to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Agenda item 5, the mid-year review of work programme. Rebecca, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Item 5 is a short report to give members the opportunity to review your work programme for the remainder of the scrutiny year. You will see from the appendices to the report that you have been provided with a condensed feeder pack containing up-to-date information from the current work programme, the Executive Forward Plan, audit referrals, the risk register and performance information, including progress against the County Plan Delivery Plan, relevant to this committee. Can I highlight to members this is not the opportunity to scrutinise individual items contained within the feeders or the performance information, but rather offers the opportunity to pose questions to officers where you may identify potential issues within this information that may warrant a reprioritisation of items for the remaining 2 committee meetings. With the committee's permission, I'll come back to Appendix 1, which is the basket of items that you've already selected, with an update on regards to a couple of those pre-selected items. So can I hand back to the Chair and open the questions for Appendices 2 onwards.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, I'll open up the questions to members, and I have the first one. Appendix 3, the audit referrals. How are we ensuring that we fully address the Audit Wales recommendations, specifically in relation to strengthening our engagement with the full diversity of stakeholders who have an interest in the delivery of the sport and leisure strategy, and in establishing clear targets and milestones to enable ongoing and robust assessments of progress against the strategy?
Thank you, Chair. Important to say, if I take the second one first, in terms of the performance measures, the feedback from Audit Wales in relation to this particular strategy wasn't that we didn't have a robust performance framework in place. It's simply that because it was a new strategy, there wasn't the data in there to be able to evidence to them. So I'm confident that we've got the performance system in place. What I'd suggest to members is that may be an item that you want to bring forward for scrutiny next year once there's data within that framework. that would allow us then to report back to Audit Wales in line with what I think their recommendation is getting at of, is your framework working? Yeah. Which, in fairness, they couldn't assess yet because it's so new. The challenge around community engagement is an important one, and one that we've reflected on a lot. It's a challenge that's come through a few audit reports recently around strategy development. What we've done off the back of this one, we've actually started to engage more forcefully with our clubs, and we will be putting forward a proposal for engaging with children and young people, which was a target area for Audit Wales on this one. So it may be an item that members would want to consider in relation to scrutiny. I would suggest, from my perspective, it's probably one to bring in and consider in next year's pack as opposed to this year, but up to members obviously to make that decision.
Okay, and the second question is me again. Appendix item 5, the county plan. With regards to the key performance indicator, has the 95% target been set as a realistic and evidence-based foundation, particularly in light of sector-wide pressures and the current performance of 71%?
Yeah, absolutely. So that target is a target that's consistently been set at that level. What that target probably doesn't take into account, and I think this is the essence of the question, is the levels of demand that we have within the housing sector. What we'll do in future years is make sure that that target is more reflective of the wider market. At the minute, for this year's, that was a continuation of the targets and the way the targets would have previously been set. So it certainly is an area that we can look at in terms of setting targets for the future. And yeah, one that we're happy to look at. Whether that's something that you'd want to consider as a committee in terms of the review, I wonder if that may focus on a niche issue in terms of target setting. So if the committee's happy, my recommendation on that would be that we take that away and reflect on that in any case, regardless of a scrutiny committee session.
Okay, Appendix 5. Given that the IAA team continues to receive PPNs for individuals who do not require social care involvement, will Gwent Police implementation of SharePoint support more of an accurate triage and reduce the numbers of unnecessary PPNs being forwarded to the IIA team?
If I come in here, I don't know whether Lee would have any comments that he wants to add. It's convenient that Lee's here today, but I suspect not, on the basis that this is a conversation with other parts of the police, in fairness, rather than Lee's remit. So just to put that before members, that if you're expecting Lee to answer that one, it may well be a colleague of Lee's that's needed there. From my perspective in relation to that, though, it's really important that we do have the debate around PPN numbers. The numbers are flowing through into several parts of our system, so early intervention and prevention being one, but also into the children's social care front door and into the adult social care front door. We've had positive conversations with police colleagues around creating a stronger dashboard that allows us to track and monitor some of this, which should help to bring that level down. Yeah. What I'd suggest members may want to consider, and it's a conversation then that we would need to pick up with police colleagues of Lee's, is a system-wide scrutiny. So rather than it just being a scrutiny on the council's actions, a scrutiny session that brings in other partners to look at what's happening across the whole of that part of the system. That we've rarely done before, but I do think that might be an area for members to consider. We will have to then obviously go and have those conversations with colleagues in the police, colleagues in health, colleagues in housing, if you choose to do it in that way. Yeah. But if it's a request coming from the committee, I think that would probably be looked on more favourably than a request coming from it.
Thank you. Our next question, Councillor Horler.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everybody. This is on application country plan, the wellbeing objective number 9, digital first customer strategy. We can see that there's a number of amber and red designations against activity measures under the heading. We've explanatory complementary along, but is there anything within the section of significant concern that would be significantly needed to draw to a member's attention in view for us to reprioritise further scrutiny?
Certainly welcome members' views here on how performance is going in terms of what you see and feel on the ground. My understanding from conversations with members is that the system is actually holding up okay at the minute, certainly compared to where the system was a couple of years ago and the peaks in demand we saw with people unable to get through to the call centre. As I think I've mentioned this one in full council when this has come through previously, the abandoned call rates will always show as red on the system for now because of a change in the way that we report. So, without going into too much technical detail, 2 years ago when this measure was first conceived, if somebody picked up the phone and was waiting on the phone for a long time and put the phone down, that was constituted an abandoned call. That's a bad outcome because that person hasn't been able to resolve their query. But then last year we introduced something called IVR, which is basically a routing service that sits at the front end of the phone. So now if you pick up the phone, you may well find that you're getting information that helps you answer your query without needing to speak to an operative, but you're still going to put the phone down. Our system can't distinguish whether someone's put the phone down because they've had the right information and have served the question that they need, or have put the phone down because they've been waiting too long. So what we've recommended is that the abandoned call measure actually comes out as a measure of county plan because it doesn't tell us whether that's good, i.e. people don't need to speak to an operative because they've self-served, or bad, i.e. people are waiting too long. What we do know is that we don't think it can be bad because if you look at the call wait times, they're actually quite positive and they're performing quite well across most of the categories there. So actually, these measures, we wouldn't be recommending they go forward for county plan next year in any case. And on that basis, it's up to members, obviously, but I'm not sure that would be an area that I'd be recommending focus.
Thank you. Okay, I'll hand over to Rebecca now regarding the TSMG, which was postponed from the November meeting due to timing issues.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, if I can just draw members' attention back to the work programme that you selected at Visioning, you'll see that originally you had picked third sector major grants as an item for November meeting, but that was postponed, and you took the library chapter of the community wellbeing strategy in its place. With regards to timing now, that is coming up at a pertinent time for it. You can see that you've got housing demand scheduled for the 5th of March meeting. But I believe you have recently received a seminar on that, and there is the development of the housing strategy that will be coming forward into service plans for 26-27. So it's up to you, committee. You have two options. You can either have a special meeting and an additional meeting to consider the third sector major grant item, or you could replace the housing item for the 5th of March meeting and take the third sector major grant report to that meeting, with a view to then considering housing strategy at Visioning and be selecting that as an item next year. Open to committee for your views.
Thank you, Rebecca. Right, your views. I think probably number 2 to remove the housing demand from the agenda. So do you have any points to make?
Yeah, I agree on that. I think option 2 is better out of option 1. Right now, thank you.
Okay.
So, members, can I just clarify then, obviously you're happy to replace the 5th of March meeting with the third sector major grants meeting. Based on everything, the responses that you've heard then today, are you still then happy for EIP to be for the... Oh, sorry, Dave wants to come in, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Evans, I didn't see your hand up.
Yeah, no, just to agree, I'm quite happy myself for the housing to be pushed back and we do the third sector grant funding. So, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, sorry about that. Are you then happy to still have EIP for the April meeting, or is there anything that you've reflected on today that you would like to reprioritise?
No.
Still happy for EIP?
Still happy.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, members.
Okay, agenda item 6, community safety. Before we conduct introductions, I would like to express the thanks of the committee to Keith Moore and his team of volunteers at Blenavon Youth Strategy Team for hosting a visit at their Tuesday after school club, and also a more general thanks on behalf of us all for their time, effort and dedication in providing this club for the young people of Blenavon. Thank you. Okay, moving on to introductions, I would like to welcome Executive Member Fiona Cross Feel free to contribute to responses at any point during the discussions. And I'd also like to welcome Inspector Lee Satchow from Gwent Police. Thank you for joining us today. Could I just ask officers to quickly introduce yourselves to the committee as we welcome new faces at the scrutiny this morning?
Sorry, Chair. Can I give my...
Morning all, I'm Catherine Jones, the Complex Support Team Lead, also overseeing community safety.
Oh, good morning all. I'm Simon Rushton. I'm a Group Manager for Community Wellbeing. The reason I'm here is that since the EIP review and restructure, community safety sits within my area.
Morning all, Karen Mayo, Community Safety Lead.
Hello, Betha.
Yeah, good morning everyone. Bethan McPherson, Head of Community and Wellbeing. I've got really bad signal. I think most of you know me, but you're in the capable hands of the team today, but I'm here if there's anything additional to answer.
Thank you. Okay, would any officers or executive members like to make any opening remarks before we commence questioning? No? Okay, moving on to the questions. So it is 3.2. As part of the wider restructure of preventative services in Torfaen, the community safety team now sits within the complex support team of the Early Intervention and Prevention Service. Could you briefly set out the rationale for change?
So there was a review of preventative services within Torfaen, and I think the rationale is for everyone who has responsibility for prevention or preventing people from reaching statutory services were to sit under one team, so that we could collaborate, we could share information, and that we all go through a triage system at the Early Intervention Prevention Hub, so that we were providing the right support at the right time for people rather than jumping around the system. Community safety was brought into that obviously because our job is to prevent and intervene with crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. So that was the rationale for bringing community safety into the IP as well.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. Councillor Slade. Bethan?
I think Beth has got her hand up, or did have.
Yeah, just really quickly to just add in as well, I think probably the added benefit as well of obviously the purpose of the prevention hub is around that sort of consolidated oversight. So we get one single view of an adult or a child that's coming through that system, so that actually the support is distributed across the whole of the council in the most appropriate way. And ultimately, is to try and reduce down that demand, so actually the independence and resilience of a person is achieved at the earliest opportunity, rather than pulling them too far into a system too prematurely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slade.
Morning, everyone. My first question refers to paragraph 3.3 of the report, which states that the aim of Safer Torfaen is to develop and implement strategies to tackle crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. And my question is, can you provide us with a clear sort of definition of what antisocial behaviour is, and how does different levels of antisocial behaviour impact on our approach to early intervention and prevention activity?
Thanks, Councillor Slade. So the legal definition of antisocial behaviour is behaviour that causes alarm, harassment or distress. However, that can be interpreted very differently by different people. What might cause distress for a young person could be different to an older person. So when we're applying that definition to what we do, it's very much case-by-case basis, and we work on the impact that it's having on a person rather than by definition. Also, that definition includes antisocial behaviour that is dealt with by other partners or other areas of the local authorities, such as environmental health. So they deal with the environmental type of antisocial behaviour, where there's noise, nuisance, littering, graffiti. So whilst that sits within the community safety team under the ASB definition, it's actually dealt by by other agencies, and similar with the police deal with different types of antisocial behaviour. Could you repeat the second part of your question, please, Councillor?
Yes, I think what I was trying to get at was, as you say, antisocial behaviour is kind of a broad brush, really, and I kind of wondered whether there were sort of any sort of risk assessment, because obviously I think some forms of antisocial behaviour are more disruptive, or have more of an impact than others, maybe. So is this any sort of risk assessment done to sort of channel the solution or the early prevention, if you get what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of risk assessment, we don't risk assess every situation of antisocial behaviour, but we do have our community safety hub where we discuss with partners. I think there's over 60 partners around the table. Incidents of antisocial behaviour or within hotspot areas. And I think by sharing information and sharing the impact that it's having across our services, we're able then to prioritise our workloads and, assess the risk. What's the risk to the community? What's the risk to the young person? What is the risk to the impact on services as well? So I suppose we do it as part of our day-to-day activity.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Horler.
Thank you, Chair. This is following on from Councillor Allen Slade's question. How do we monitor changes to types of antisocial behaviour and new emerging behaviours? One current issue that we're currently seeing is a lot of ball bearings and catapults that are coming into it that I would say that goes into antisocial behaviour but also goes into criminal damage because of what's been happening. But there has been instances that I've seen that are very, very antisocial, and we're seeing a lot more of it. And how do you actually monitor that?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think before I answer the question, just a point to make is it's really difficult sometimes as a team to distinguish between what's antisocial and what's criminal, because by very nature, involved in criminality is an antisocial behaviour as well, but that's something that we work with our police colleagues, and we make sure that we're all targeting, what we should be in the right bits. In terms of new and emerging trends, obviously we have excellent links with our local members across Torfaen. We have good links with the community where we're attending police community meetings. I know Karen set up a number of meetings within the local authority to encourage people to come to us. And it's off that information then that we're identifying our trends. So if nobody was speaking to us, if we didn't have councillor engagement, we wouldn't be aware of the rise in the slingshot incidents until we looked at the police data and they raised it to us. So the level of information we get from the community via yourselves, via our partners at our Community Safety Hub, via things that's noticed in the Early Intervention and Prevention Hub that's shared with us as well. That's how we identify those trends. And if we either discuss them at Hub on how we're going to tackle it, or if it is becoming more of an emerging issue, we could look at it strategically at Safe Torfaen, and it is something that we will be raising at the next meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Hall, it's in relation to the question of policing perspective, just for some reassurance for yourself and the other members. We have a weekly tasking meeting, so every Monday my team will sit down and we will look at the statistics for the last 7 days. So as part of that, we will look at the calls coming into the force, what the category is, what they're in relation to, any investigations or any intelligence. So we will pick up trends and patterns based on that. But we also have a fortnightly force tasking meeting as well, whereby any trends or patterns the analyst picks up, so that could be slingshot usage, will feature on that. And then that drives us then to put a plan in play, linking with partners, as Kath has said, to address and tackle the issue. So we've got that sort of covered on a weekly basis and a fortnightly basis, if that helps.
Just before Christmas, there was an incident, and we put a promotion out to talk about slingshots and everything else. The schools were told about the issues. I raised it. It got a lot of media attention, and in fact, talking to Karen yesterday, it got into the Daily Star on the first week in January, the same article. But it was seen by the public in that process. There was a guy from the Beano that was in it that used to have a slingshot. And it was almost like it wasn't much of a problem, but I think right now, why I wanted to ask that question is that I do see potential damage and hindrance to communities related to this particular new trend. Thank you.
So, Councillor, just talking about slingshots, just while we're on the subject, I think we probably all appreciate that the legislation around buying them, you can buy them for sporting, and they're relatively easy to get hold of. However, when they fall into the sort of criminal arena of damage being caused or wildlife being killed or something similar to that, that's when we need to take action in relation to it. And it is something that we're having a look at the moment. You know, we have discussed that we're looking to do some pre-planned operations in relation to it. Yeah, and that's pretty much where we are with that.
Can I just come in there as well? I did raise the slingshot incidents at the All Wales group to see if anything around the rest of Wales is having this. And currently it isn't. It does seem to be isolated towards the south. We don't know the reasoning for that, but obviously we're investigating with schools, with local clubs, with youths as well as the reasoning behind that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. A lovely morning. Mine is paragraph 4.1, and the part is the EIP hub went live in June 2025, following the restructure of preventative service in the local authority. And the question I got, what other teams sit within the EIP hub? And is this proving more effective structure for sharing data that supports prevention work for community safety? I know Bethan will be on that one.
Yeah, good morning, Councillor. Hopefully my signal is slightly improved and you can hear me okay. So in terms of what is covered under the prevention, it's designed to be anything that the council delivers as a preventative service. So the main teams that will be covered is community safety sits within the prevention, support to young people, especially those sort of NEET or at risk of becoming NEET. We have a complex team that picks up family sort of support elements, so that's largely around the principles of family first, etc. We have financial inclusion, housing elements sit there as well, and from an aspiration perspective we have employability and skills. Obviously at the early sort of on the entrance to the prevention hub we have the community team then that obviously does that almost earliest prevention activity with the community, but we can get a sort of consolidated list to you if that's helpful, just as a reference point really, so that you understand kind of what sits in that prevention hub. In terms of data, yes, we've gone live since June, and during that time we're obviously still evolving, we're still sort of reviewing that data, is it giving us what we need, etc. But almost certainly I think there are positive signs. We're seeing the right referrals coming in from our referral agencies, whether that be health or schools, etc. And what it's allowing us to do is make sure that, yes, we are delivering the right support at the right time. It's given us better opportunity to signpost people to the community alongside some service support that might be offered. And obviously the other element that we have within the prevention hub then is also our commissioned provision. So we're not responsible under this model for delivering all preventative services. Some sit directly with staff, but we actually commission some of our commissioned providers as well. So again, it allows us to look holistically really around what support is needed. What is enabling us to start doing now as that data is coming through as well is identify gaps in provision. So where perhaps things are coming in and there isn't a service, whether that be community commissioned or directly, it allows us to look at what is that gap and how do we mobilise the most appropriate response to that. So very early days. It's obviously on the agenda for future scrutiny, and I think by the time it comes in there then some of that data will be a little bit more robust and we'll be able to demonstrate sort of where people are being referred from, the nature of those referrals and the support that they are receiving at the back end of that and the outcomes that are being achieved.
Happy with that?
Thank you for the comprehensive answer. Yeah, I knew you would give a good answer, Bethan.
I'll be coming back to you, Councillor Evans, if that's okay, with your question for point 1.2.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, this is while the community safety team is embedded in the EIP, the team remain the front door for the antisocial behaviour referrals. They had as they are dealing with incidents, not people, that need to be investigated before any action is taken. The question I've got is, what are the average timescales seen from the point of referral through investigation to action actually being taken?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so referrals come in to the team from police colleagues, from schools, from members, members of the community as well. When we get those referrals, the investigation starts that day. So a dedicated officer who covers that area will pick it up, and then we will share information with our partners to try and verify the incident, to see if there's any evidence available, and to identify any persons not already identified. I would say through the time frames from referral to maybe a letter being sent or a young person arranged to come into the station is probably 5 working days. It is quick, and it's because we like to act quick so that the young person isn't like, oh, I did that 2 weeks ago, and then we're not targeting the behaviour that's relevant to the referral. So it is a quick process.
Thank you. Okay, this is just to clarify, really, for a bit of clarity. The information letters, strike 1 and strike 2, now encourage families to access community-based support using the Connect platform. Just to clarify, is that the Torfaen Connect platform?
Yes, it is, Councillor. Excellent.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Slade. You're on mute, Councillor Slade.
Bit of a schoolboy error, sorry. Yes, this question refers to paragraph 4.1.2, bullet point 3, which says that young people discussed at multi-agency pupil intervention, MAPI, meetings in schools are referred to HUB to ensure that data is shared and cross-referencing across agencies can be done. Have we seen an improvement in respect of data sharing and cross-referencing across agencies and partners since moving into the EIP hub?
Thank you, Councillor. The simple answer is yes, we have seen an improvement, particularly around our NEET young people not in education or training, and where we're focusing on young people in MAPI meetings involved in antisocial behaviour. A lot of those are modified timetables, and then they're falling into the NEET category. So now, as we're part of the hub, we can work a lot closer with the complex NEETs teams, cross-referencing our data and making sure that a full package of support is put in place for young people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 4.1.2. Community support has been built into the strike process as an exit strategy for all ASB cases, working closely with community connectors to find suitable activities. Are we consistently able to identify and provide suitable activities as part of the exit strategy for all ASB cases? And furthermore, is participation in these activities mandatory, or does it remain voluntary?
Thank you. I'll take the second part of the question first. Everything we do is voluntary. It's only when we get to court that engagement in activities become compulsory. And with prevention, unless a young person or an adult wants to change, then voluntary agreements don't work, and neither would the interventions. In terms of sourcing activities as exit strategies, we are able to do that for the majority of our young people again and our adults using the IP hub, and we're accessing a lot more services now, community-based services that the team weren't aware of previously while we're outside of the hub. So it's really allowed us to have a more holistic view of what is available in terms of support for families, for children, for adults, to be able to signpost then at the end of an intervention that we provide. There are gaps in certain provisions that we are working with the hub, with the community connector team, the capacity builders, to identify those gaps and see what services are needed, in particular sometimes around music, arts, things for girls, beauty, but we are currently building our portfolio up of extra activities.
Thank you. Bethan.
Yeah, just to come in on that last point that Kath was talking about in terms of community provision and where the gaps currently are, and I think that's probably a key area of work, especially when we talk about sort of more vulnerable young people or those that perhaps come with additional barriers, is that there might be community provision, but sometimes it's the skills or the experiences of some of those, you know, community groups to be able to support young people in the right way. So that in some instances is probably a little bit of a gap, and I think there's probably some development work with community groups alongside sort of more formal teams of commissioning to sort of look at what does that provision kind of need to look like. And more broadly, obviously, community provision for young people is there and it's accessible to all, and we're simply making people more aware, I guess, of what's in their community, and we would never sort of see it as a formal referral, as Kath has alluded to. So hopefully that adds.
Yes, thank you so much. Moving on to Councillor Evans.
I think you just covered some of this, Bethan, but support for the most complex antisocial behaviour cases via the mentoring programme, and this is 4.12 again. The question I got, do we have sufficient capacity to deliver mentoring programmes where needed? It's all right having it in place, but have we got enough there for to deal with it?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Evans. We do have sufficient capacity for the mentoring programme. The project works with our most complex young people, so at the end of our strike process, more likely to be engaged with youth offending service or go on to needing a statutory order. The numbers that go through, get to that stage in our process is quite low, average maybe 10 a year. So there's enough provision for that, and then obviously we use more preventative and early interventions for the young people that come to us on the lower end of the strike process. So at the moment, capacity is not an issue with mentoring because they're working with the hard end of our young people.
Thank you. Councillor Hawler.
This follows on from that. 4.1.3. Community safety function within the EIP focuses on early intervention and prevention. Is there significant resources and capacity within the team to be more proactive in prevention and intervention activities over reactionary?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So we do offer prevention and intervention in community safety. So the intervention is reactionary, so after the event, but we have a whole host of preventative activity that we offer through our partnership working. So we have the Breakaway project that is out and about in the communities, working with young people, engaging them through the medium of sport, and then we have really good turnover of young people there. We do lots in our schools in terms of assemblies and workshops. We get charities come in and do bespoke pieces around, it could be around antisocial behaviour, serious violence, it could be vaping, because we've got the partnership networks available. So being in the hub as well now, the Early Intervention and Prevention Hub, we're now again aware of more services that we can tap into and that can come in and do preventative work. We're finding lately, in terms of the slingshot, and you mentioned that a message has gone out to schools. So, if you think the number of people who's receiving that message as prevention, we can never quantify whether we've stopped anybody going to buy a slingshot and engaging, but it's positive, positive steps trying to do that.
Following on from that, what age group do you start this process at?
So the age of criminal responsibility is 10. So we used to start at 10 for antisocial behaviour. However, in probably the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen that age significantly reduce. We speak to some children as young as 7 and 8 who are involved in antisocial behaviour, or their siblings are, or their friends are, because we're noticing that 8-year-olds are associated with 11 and 12-year-olds out in the community. But we do have our primary school MAPI meetings in place so that young people of that age, 8, 9, 10 and 11, are monitored the same way as our comprehensive children. And that's, again, where they're so young, this is where referrals into the Early Intervention and Prevention Hub really support our work, because there's a lot more access to services for that age group, and we work particularly well with the Place Service, and they do some mentoring for us. They run some Lego clubs. So yeah, 8 and below really we're seeing now. It should be 10, but...
Thank you for that reassurance. In my perspective, catch it younger and younger, the better it's going to be the long term, the progression through the ages and into school and then on to work life. Catching it young is very paramount for me, and it's good to hear that you are doing that. Thank you.
Bring in Bethan. Bethan, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just very quickly, and I think it was on Councillor Haller's final sort of comment there. I think it's that important element, isn't it, about this being built in earlier and earlier, but not purely from an antisocial behaviour agenda either. You know, for me, some of this is around embedding, isn't it, good community resilience. It's around aspiration for some of these young people. So we're doing, you know, much more work with schools around being community-focused schools and how that support can be embedded. We've got the work around aspirations that we're doing with our local primary and secondary schools, you know, about the world of work, about opportunity, entrepreneurship, you know, really giving young people who perhaps are not academic that opportunity to sort of excel in different ways. And sort of we're moving towards the principle of it being everybody's responsibility. So, you know, everybody who's got a touch point with a young person is an opportunity, isn't it, to get that earliest prevention in. So hopefully some of those behaviours don't escalate into antisocial behaviour. So I think that's just important in the context of the wider why we're doing early intervention and prevention, to hopefully limit the numbers that ultimately will come then through the prevention hub door.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. This is in paragraph 4.14. Regular collaboration occurs between the two, sharing intelligence, referring cases as needed, and participating in partnership meetings. The question I have is, with a community safety team within the EIP, Community Safety Hub and Safer Torvine, is there a risk of duplication of efforts?
Thanks, Councillor. No, because we're in the EIP, it makes sure that we're not duplicating, because we're now able to know if complex families are working with a young person or if a young person is involved in a NEAT team. So we're making sure that the people are getting the right support at the right time from the right team as well, so that whatever the issues are they're facing, that is tackled by the team with the skill set to do that. In terms of Community Safety Hub and Safer Torvine and Community Safety Team and the EIP Hub, I know it's confusing, but Safer Torvine is actually the strategic board for community safety, and by law we have to have them. The Community Safety Hub is then the operational delivery arm of Safer Torvine, so that's where you're looking at your hotspot areas, your antisocial behaviour cases, and then EIP is obviously prevention across the board for Torvine, and so they sound quite similar, but they've all got different functions.
Thank you. Next question is from Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is probably going to answer itself, really. It's appreciated that the Hub is still a fairly new initiative, but will the performance indicators and the data captured be reviewed to determine whether we are comprehensively capturing and monitoring the right data to be able to drive service improvement and develop appropriate interventions in the right places?
Absolutely, Councillor Slade. So at the design stage, we developed a key set of performance outcomes. So they relate to the flow through the hub, so we can really understand who comes in, where they go, and what support they receive and the outcome that they receive. We can see, you know, who drops out, why they drop out, and then there are sort of service level performance indicators then that helps us understand within services what kind of provision they're putting in place. We are constantly reviewing that data to make sure that the performance measures we've got are the right ones, that they're robust and they're telling us the right things, and that our system allows us to capture that data in the way that we need it to. So that will be an evolving piece to make sure it is robust, and absolutely for that purpose that we can then sort of see the trends analyse where there are gaps, where there are needs, and that then should inform everything from types of service delivery that we do, what work we commission. So our commissioning programme and plans will be, part of that review process as well. So we're targeting our resources in the most appropriate places, and also then potential funding to support community groups, etc. A huge element of this is around, the community and elements that they can do, and therefore how do we direct potential grants in a way that can support that agenda. So the data is fundamental to know when we're having the right impact and to shaping then how we inform service delivery moving forward. And again, this can come into scrutiny. That's part of the, the future reporting requirements. So.
Thank you. And back to Councillor Slade for your next question.
Yeah, this is particularly interest to me because Cumbrae Town Centre is in my ward. And the question is, are the owners of Cumbrae Town Centre actively working with the council and Gwent Police? And what are they doing to help address the recent rise in antisocial behaviour, which has already required dispersal orders in the town centre? It seems to me, and anecdotally it seems, that many residents are avoiding going to town now, particularly in the evenings, because of the issues. Are the interventions currently used a sufficient deterrent for the activities being engaged in?
Councillor, I'll happily answer that one for you. In relation to the security team and the owners of Cumbrae Town Centre, we do have regular meetings with those. They are engaging and they're willing to help and support us. My team work with them most days, as in they will sort of go into the control room, speak to them, and they will go out and they'll deal with incidents together. Obviously, the security team are limited in relation to what they can deal with, so they do rely on us to help them and support them with that. Just for some reassurance for you and other members, the government are heavily invested in neighbourhood policing, as we're all aware of. So we've got the luxury of the additional patrols in the town centre. So there is more police than we probably ever had on Cumbrae Town Centre, which is making a positive effect. We have got some challenges with 1 or 2 locations on the town. And again, we're looking at having meetings with them to see how we can collectively work together to try to reduce the amount of antisocial behaviour. Obviously, anyone identified by my team, the referrals go straight into the partnership, and the partnership they're working really hard and they react really quickly to any antisocial behaviour referrals we submit. But I think it's also worth remembering as well, is sometimes when you look at the statistics, we have more officers than ever and more of a presence than ever on the town centre, which is a really good thing when we look at improving trust and confidence within the communities of Torfaen. A lot of incidents are reported face-to-face to my team, so naturally a lot of the time we may see an increase in ASB-related calls coming through to us. We actively encourage the calls that come through to tell us what's going on. So, as well as react to statistics when they spike, there can be a picture behind it sometimes. Plus, we also work with CCYP as well. Councillor, on the town centre, I know the PCC is supporting CCYP. There's outreach workers and the partnership support at CCYP. So I think collectively we are doing all we can to address the antisocial behaviour on the town centre in Cumbrae. I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, it's, as I say, I'm a ward member there and I've been a councillor for 8 years, and it is a sort of frustration that this is something that never seems to go away, really. Yeah. I just wondered if there was some sort of magic bullet, that perhaps something we are not doing, which we could do, maybe. Help maybe keep the kids in the areas from where they live, rather than have to congregate in town. But,
yeah. I think, and you'll be well aware, this is self-councillor without naming certain retailers, but there are 1 or 2 attractive places for young people to go on Cumbrae Town Centre. There's lots of free Wi-Fi around as well, which seems to be a bit of attraction. So that's part of a problem-orientated policing plan or POP plan that we've got on the town at the moment, whereby we're looking to identify with our partners the root causes of these issues. And that could be sort of access to Wi-Fi. We all know Cumbrae Town is sheltered, so when the weather's bad, it's a particularly attractive place to go because people are not going to get wet and particularly cold. So that's where we're working with all the other partners to try and identify what we can do to make some long-term, mid- and long-term changes to Cumbrae Town to try to make it better.
Yeah.
Can I also
Thanks.
add that Cumbrae Town Centre, one of our partners, is sit round our hub, our community safety hub, so we're in daily contact as well with them. and wherever they raise, they are discussed in our hotspots area within our hub agenda.
Councillor Hall, you wanted to make a comment?
An observation. Currently, or many times when I go down to the shopping centre, as you do, you see an awful lot of antisocial behaviour being caused by push bikes, e-bikes that are going through the town centre. I actually put myself in front of an e-bike the other day on a wheelie, and to be quite frank, the streets were really busy and there were people going down with wheelies doing that. Is there a way that you could actually prevent bicycles actually entering the shopping centre? Because that's one route of antisocial behaviour, as far as I'm concerned.
That is something that Cumbrae Shopping would have to agree to, obviously, if they're private land, and it would be up to them. I know bikes are banned. I know security are quite active in stopping that happening, and then they'll send images to us. We can identify young people. But, you know, it is an issue. I've seen it myself as well, and it can be dangerous. But we would have to take it back to Cumbrae Shopping to look at barriers. The issue is there's so many access points into Cumbrae Town Centre. Unless you wall it off, it would be quite difficult, but good recommendation. Can I just also make the point, sorry, we say about the antisocial behaviour in Cumbrae, there is a lot of young people that go to Cumbrae Town Centre who is not involved in antisocial behaviour. They have the right to gather, they have, you know, under the youth rights. I think a lot of the issues that we find is dealing with perception linked to young people, and if there's a group they're causing antisocial behaviour, well, no, they're loud, they're leery, but they're not causing any harm. So something that we do with our partners, in particular CCYP, is try and look at projects that we can do intergenerationally so that people can see a positive influence that young people have on their communities. And that's something that we try and push all the time. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Could I say I totally? Can I just say I totally agree with that? Just because there are kids gathered, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're up to anything. Yeah, I fully accept that.
Thank you, Councillor Clough.
Well, you saved half of what I was going to say then. So, yeah, I remember as a young person, I felt that perception. And when you walk to different shops and you see a minimum of 5 children or maximum of 5 children allowed in the shop, it makes you feel very negative. So I think it is really important to hear that voice, and as a council to be genuine about that youth voice. We say that we want to hear them, and we need to keep on mentioning that it's a small percentage of children and young people that are potentially causing this problem. And then in terms of the other point that was raised, blocking access to bikes, I recognise, I've seen it as well, the bikes going through town. But once you start making physical changes to any area, you also block people with disabilities. So you have to be, it's very difficult to manage. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you, everyone. Councillor Evans.
Follow on from that discussion, which is the hotspot. What are other authorities and police forces doing, particularly in hotspot areas which we just discussed in? And could we be learning from their approaches to intervention and prevention, particularly in the big cities? That's what I'm asking that question.
Thanks, Councillor. So in terms of antisocial behaviour, we are fortunate that we attend the All Wales Antisocial Behaviour Practitioners Group. And we discuss items such as this for colleagues across Wales, and there's police officers there, there's local authority, community safety staff there, there's youth offending. So we are actively trying to learn, share best practice, not just in Gwent, but across Wales. Town centres are always difficult, and when we're talking to Cardiff and we're talking to Newport, it is very different to Torfaen, even though Cumbrae is our mini city, I suppose. But yeah, we are taking the opportunities to learn from others. We did have, a few years ago, there was an initiative with boy racers in car parks that we learnt from Blackpool and how they dealt with those and the different enforcement we used. So we implemented that in Cumbrae. It worked for a time, and then you have new young people getting new driving licences, and they're the new boy racers, but touchwood is not such an issue at the moment. So yeah, there's an example of where we've implemented something that we've learnt from elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Horler.
This refers to 4.2.3. On occasion, ASB is reported to the police, but reported direct to the team from several sources, including members. What sources do referrals come from? And have we made potential sources aware of the new way of working within the EIP? And how can we engage with communities to report incidents?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So we can get antisocial behaviour referrals from anyone, even members of the public can contact us. We actively encourage that because they're victims of antisocial behaviour. Our referrals come from police, from schools, from all public services really, as well as self-referrals sometimes from parents when their child is involved in behaviours and parents are asking for support. However, now linking into the EIP hub where those parents are supported, a referral can be made through the hub. An assessment is based on the need, because sometimes antisocial behaviour is a symptom of a problem, it's not a cause. So working with EIP hub, the team can direct referrals into there, and they can offer parenting support, family support through complex families. So as I said, even though we take in reports of antisocial behaviour, as a team we can identify that there's wider issues, there's complex needs that need addressing, rather than sending a letter for a strike letter saying don't do it again, when actually we've identified that there's a reason this is happening. So that's where the links with the EIP hub has been instrumental in further supporting our young people in a more holistic way. That's something that we wouldn't been able to do before without being involved in the hub. And in terms of the community reporting incident, we try and champion Crime Stoppers. I can't think what it's called off the top of my head, but there's a young person's version of Crime Stoppers, Fearless, it just came to me, yeah, Fearless, that we promote in our schools, in our community clubs as well. But we have antisocial behaviour questionnaires that we can send out to the public that are anonymous. Because we're working on the balance of probabilities and not beyond reasonable doubt, when we go to tackle issues, our civil law is all the threshold we need to meet. So if we sent anonymous questionnaires to a street and we had them back and the same person was named 4 times or even twice, that's enough for us really to be able to start working with that young person, because on the balance of probabilities, 4 people's not going to lie and that young person probably was involved. So we have got lots of ways of gathering information. Obviously, we rely heavily on yourselves as members to report information to us as well, because I know residents feel more comfortable reporting to you and remaining anonymous, and then you feed in back to us. So our referrals could come from anywhere, but we are actively trying to promote ways for the public to engage with us as well.
From my perspective, social media has become this massive, big alien to a lot of people. You see a lot of people ranting about issues of ASB and criminal damage and everything else. But when they say about it, they're not actually talking to those that need to know about it. And I have many conversations, and I have been having many conversations about this. Every single time I see a issue that's related on social media, that's related to an ASB or a concern by a resident, the first thing I would do is put a comment on there: have you contacted the police? We're all aware, if the police don't know about it, they can't deal with those issues. And my concern right now is that people don't engage with the police as much as they should, or the teams, to be able to make citizens' lives within communities better, because they're not telling the community, those people that run the community, of what's going on. So how can we engage with those people, and how can we get this message out? We need to get this message out in a bigger way. I fully understand that it's going to give us all more work. However, I think it's going to help the community by solving the issues that we currently have, and it's right across.
Yeah, and I appreciate sometimes phoning 101. Sorry, maybe I should let the police defend 101. But it can be challenging. You can be waiting for quite a while. We actively encourage people to use the direct message service on the Gwent Police website. It's much quicker, and the Facebook. But just, I think, bear in mind sometimes everything that you see on Facebook, everyone jumps on a bandwagon, something is reported, and then someone says, oh, I saw that, and I've been we need to evidence everything before we can take any action. So unless people do report it through the right channels, even if it is just through a Facebook message or a WhatsApp or an email, as long as they give us the information for us to investigate, that's fine. And we can promote it as much as we can, but it is difficult to get people to engage. And a lot of people are fearful of reprisals as well, that if you're asking them to put pen to paper, they're happy to raise the issue, but they don't want to take it any further. And then for public services, it's really frustrating then to have the evidence to be able to do anything with it.
Just a brief update, Councillor's going to talk briefly about neighbourhood matters. I don't know if you've heard of neighbourhood matters. Yeah, it's a new system that the Grant Police has adopted, and we're going through the roll-out phase of it at the moment. It's going to be really good. It's trialled by a lot of forces in the UK, and the benefits of it is we can go to a particular area, we can do surveys of the residents, and we can find out what matters to you, what matters to a neighbour 2 doors up, and then we can map what those concerns are. We then upload them to the database, which allows us to communicate with those individuals. So if you sign up yourself, councillor, and you say antisocial behaviour related to off-road bikes is an issue for you, if we got some news or we want to make you aware of something or we do an operation, we can send a direct message out to people who've raised that as an issue. Whereas your neighbour 3 doors up who's raised littering, they may not be as interested as you would be in an antisocial bike operation, for example. So we're looking to encourage that two-way conversation whereby you could then reply to us as a neighbourhood policing team, which we've never really had, or we've never had as accessible and as easy as that. So I honestly think for us that's going to be a game changer, as well as a community.
How do we actually promote that that app is there? Because I think it's a revolution. I'm getting reports coming on a daily basis on my private phone about issues that have been happening. How can we get more active members within the communities to enjoy that app, please?
So at the moment, the teams are, I would say the rollout phase, we're doing really, really well with that. We've completed a lot of surveys. So we're looking for face-to-face contact to try and build those relationships with the communities. So my team will go out into, say, Blaenavon, councillors, that's your area, and the rest of Torfaen, and they will do the door-to-door surveys. They will sign people up and they will tell them about this product. We will advertise and engage with events. It's obviously on all of our social media. I know our comms team regularly advertise it. So we're looking to promote it via a whole host of different ways. I think, from my perspective, I appreciate it's going to take a little bit of time to embed. And I think it probably wouldn't be right if we thought that this would happen overnight. But we're making some really, really, really good inroads with lots and lots of people signed up to it. So we'll continue the face-to-face engagement, the social media engagement. The control room are fully aware of it as well, so if someone calls in on a 101 or 909, the control room operators will actively look to get them signed up. So there's a whole host of ways that we're looking to increase the numbers for that.
Thank you, Lee. This is a really positive move for communities. It's a way forward because people use their phones more so than any other way. And if it's behind a phone, then it's going to be a lot easier. And I do really welcome this. Thank you.
Councillor Cross.
I've just done the police's admin for them and sent it to you.
Thank you.
And to point out that I've been signed up to it for a while. It does look very useful. It is, as Leah said, it's in the early stages, but I think it gives... it's the data that it'll drive down to, the specific area data, that makes it quite exciting and different. So I just want to put my thumbs up that I think it's a positive move by the police.
Thank you. I just want to say that I actually contact Gwent Police through Facebook. Much more patients than waiting on 101. And they've been really responsive. So I'm really impressed with your Facebook team. So that's just a comment I wanted to make. Okay, the question is relating to 4.2.4. Sorry. The success rate since joining the EIP in June 2025 currently stands at 100%, but is likely to fluctuate as expected as results are dependent on the levels of voluntary engagement from young people and families. Are we experiencing a strong level of voluntary engagement for young people and their families, and has voluntary engagement improved as a result of our new intervention approaches?
Thank you, Councillor. So, as I said earlier, all the interventions community safety offer can offer are voluntary. We tend to find that the young people who don't engage in our interventions are the ones that escalate quickly through our strike process and usually end up on injunctions. The strike data that we have, it shows that people are engaging voluntarily and parents are taking on more of a role, because the number of young people who come into our process with letters home significantly reduces before they get to the next stage. So it's encouraging that parents are speaking to their children about their behaviour and we're not seeing them come back through. But in terms of the links with the EIP hub, this is only going to improve because we're able to refer young people higher in our strike process to the hub for support. Families are more willing to engage with support services. It's not linked to the police, it's not linked to enforcement. So I think our levels of voluntary engagement should improve. Now we're linked in with the hub and the hub are offering that support.
Thank you. Councillor Hawler.
4.64. The team are finding new ways of innovative ways supporting young people and families and joining early intervention and prevention services. How are we working with young people and families to determine what would be needed before designing new innovative ways to support them? Are we consulting across the borough to ensure that we have a comprehensive base of information?
Thanks, Councillor. I think this is where the whole ethos of the EIP comes in, because it's providing the right support at the right time for people. So our services can be designed around what we're seeing coming through on referrals, what families are reporting. In terms of community safety, obviously, we look at emerging trends, where we're engaging with young people out and about through our breakaway projects, etc. We can find out what's interesting them, what the main issues are for them at the moment, so that everything that we're doing is consulting with our service users. We know from history that you can put on as many services as you think is going to work, but unless the community has some involvement in that, they're not going to attend. So I like to think that we are linked in well with our communities, and especially through the early intervention and prevention hub, that consistency is there.
Thank you. My next question is... Oh, Beth. Thank you, Beth.
Just really quickly, I'm just going to say, and I think, the benefit and the advantage of the prevention model is that ability to perhaps be more flexible moving forward, whereas traditionally, we as an authority may have stepped in and provided services, and as Kath has alluded to, that we think are the right solutions under this model, because we've got the links to the community, our availability of grants, the commissioning pieces. We can start to look more flexibly, and back to Councillor Slade's point around the data, using the data alongside intelligence from young people themselves to design a more holistic and flexible service, which hopefully can only serve better outcomes in the long term for those young people and adults. Next.
Thank you. Next question, 4.4.4. I'm asking on behalf of Councillor Slade. The breakaway team are working closely with local football, rugby, netball, tennis, basketball clubs to ensure young people are signposted to community provision. It's great that the breakaway project is seeing successful outcomes. However, with accessing sport teams comes a cost, such as subs, equipment, etc. Have we seen that be a barrier for some young people and families engaging in these community activities?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, costs are barriers for all families. We can't track how many of our young people actually go on and stay engaged in these clubs to be able to fully answer that question. But I am aware there are community kit clubs throughout Torfaen where people can go and have like rugby boots. I think there's different sporting equipment that you can go and loan. I know you can even loan bicycles at the moment. So whilst, I appreciate that it is a cost for parents to keep their children engaged in these kind of activities, there is support out there to help parents with this cost.
And I think, again, just on that point, we need to recognise that community groups, especially sporting ones, need to be sustainable. and that's where the cons come in, isn't it? So we can't sort of ignore that fact. But that said, I think again the team, especially from the community side and our sports development team, are being really proactive in terms of their work around more than a club, and some of the grants that we're sort of directing towards sports groups. It enables some of those conversations to start happening, to understand, well, what are the barriers, what are the options available to us, and again, it's about working collectively, isn't it? Rather than trying to say to a sports group, well, you know, you need to be more accommodated. It's kind of, where's the middle ground? Where are the opportunities to ensure that, yeah, wherever possible, those barriers are removed for those, you know, that struggle most. So yeah, that's part of the ongoing work that we have in place.
Thank you. Councillor Horler.
On Tuesday, we had a really interesting meeting in Blenheim. So with that in mind, the community response to those areas, particularly in Blenheim, with opening of community-run youth clubs, has contributed to the reduction without the cost to the local authority. Whilst this is pleasing that there is a community provision without the cost to the local authority, as we saw on Tuesday, there is still a cost incurred by the provision. How can we support our community provisions to maintain their sustainability without the option of direct funding? Thank you.
That is a difficult question, Councillor. You made me think, to be honest. It is difficult. Funding is always a challenge for public services and for community groups. There are grants available and we can support these local community-run clubs with those grants, and we can signpost them to accessing them. I know the Police Crime Commission has always got small grants, and I know through our commissioning strategy, through the hub, that there are grants for community clubs. It's just a very, you know, funding is a problem, I think, across the board, but we're hoping that by working more collaboratively as well in communities and with services, that we can better support this.
Yeah, just to say as well, sorry, frog in my throat there. We've got a team of community capacity builders as well that are very close to the ground. So Amy Evans would be the contact there from, and also TVA will be close to just helping to find solutions, maximising grants, etc., and just being close to the ground and understanding where there are threats to any of those projects. So we're linked in well, but I appreciate what Kat said as well. It's a challenging situation.
Whilst it's challenging, this group in Blenheim engages with the younger people, so they're engaging from 5, 6, 7-year-olds right up to the age of 11. Surely that we should be able to help them in many ways. It's the ethos of what we've been talking about earlier about engagement with communities and younger people to stop ASB moving forward in a longer way. They are exemplary in the way that they work within that group. They are volunteers. The money runs out in March, and then when potentially they have provision to take them through to July. However, that would be a massive loss to a community where 15, 25, 30 children of those ages have that provision twice a week. It would be massively lost. And surely as an organisation, we should embrace that and see if we can help those people, because that is the foot. I believe that's the start of where we are with what we have, and if we are engaging with those people, surely that's a good thing.
Thank you. Bethan?
Yeah, I think just a couple of points, and I'm not standing here, sorry, Councillor Hall, with a magic solution to the sort of the immediate group that you're referring to. But I think what is important is when we're supporting those groups and establishing them, it's understanding, isn't it? It may not always be a financial requirement. In this case, it might be, but you know, there'll be other examples where actually a different type of resource or contribution may actually help with that sustainability. You know, where we can call on sort of that corporate social responsibility. It could be looking at our own internal resources, but also those of our partners. You know, everybody around the table is that commitment to early intervention and prevention. That's health, that's police. So, you know, those conversations coming together and actually how do we use our resources smarter and in the right places to deliver some of these outcomes is the direction of travel. And obviously some of that is not quick, isn't it? Because it means changing the way we operate. But hopefully, I think from the work that we've done, it demonstrates that commitment in that direction. and it's definitely a work in progress, because fundamentally, isn't it, if that provision is being offered at place in a much earlier space through the community, that ultimately should be part of the contribution, which means less escalation up into more expensive, more complex preventative and statutory services, which is ultimately the aim that we're striving for here. So I think it's a really important point. It's one that we need to sort of start building in what we are building in, but also plan for moving forward, to sort of just understand what that could look like and how do we mobilise most appropriately. But more locally, we can probably take that one away and just have a look at it. But yeah, no magic commitment here. Sorry, Councillor Hall, on that one, but we can certainly look at it for you.
Bethan, thank you for your response. I do fully understand that, but there is a financial issue here. The club actually rents the space for 9 months of the year. I believe it costs them nearly £2,000 to do this on a voluntary basis. So there is a financial basis. The issue that I can see is if they don't have the finances to rent the space that they volunteer themselves into, that provision would be lost.
Sorry, can I come in there quickly? Sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Hall. Just obviously we don't want to concentrate on one particular scheme, so perhaps that's something we could look at outside of the meeting. Sorry to interrupt you.
Councillor Evans, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mine is paragraph 4.6.2. 4.555. I was looking at the wrong one. Collaboration with the EIP Hub will ensure that these trends are monitored wider than just substance misuse services, and ensures that young people are referred to Hub with identified substance misuse concern and signposted correctly. The question I have is, if we are seeing an increase in substance misuse, are we likely to see an increase and a demand pressure on the community safety team under the EIP?
Thank you, Councillor. Currently, substance misuse referrals go to Gwent Engage. So there's a service out there already working with the young people and adults referred for substance misuse. They are a partner around our tables, so we do share information with them. We are able to signpost. I think the point I was trying to make is where, with the EIP Hub, is where referrals are coming in around substance misuse through the Hub. We're now able to explore the reasons why people are engaging in substance abuse, so that it's a more holistic approach again. So we would have a what matters conversation with them, and whilst the substance misuse might be the end product, the reason that they're doing it is something that we can support with through the Hub. So yeah, there's not going to be an increase in demand. I think it's just going to be a more appropriate service for people with substance misuse issues.
Thank you. Okay, next question, 4.7.1. The team are supporting a review of community provision and will work with the community capacity team, commissioning and other partners to diversify sustainable provision. What is the planned timeframe for the review of the community provision for music, arts and related activities? Furthermore, which partners are being considered as part of this review? For example, Lintanum, Grange, Coleg Gwent.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so this alludes to like a current gaps analysis that Beth spoke about earlier. You know, what is in our communities, what's missing, what we need to look at. And it just in particular for us in community safety, we were seeing a gap with arts, music and more things for young girls, females. But that's always because in community safety, we've had quite a blinkered view on interventions, and it's always been through sport. So it's not to say that those provisions are not out there in the community. It's just that it's something that we haven't been made aware of previously, but obviously now linking into the Hub, you know, that's going to improve things for us.
That's lovely, great. Councillor Horler.
This is relating to 4.72. It's been a long morning. Get that.
Sorry, Councillor. Bethan,
Yeah,
did you want to come in? No?
Sorry, I was trying to lower it then because I thought I didn't want to interrupt the flow. And I think just to answer Kath's point, sorry, in terms of that community provision, so the community capacity team have been undertaking a baseline to try and gather that information, with the intention is as much of that goes on the Connect platform so it is more accessible to everybody. So there's been an initial baseline. It will be part of the ongoing work that we do. So when a need is identified, we are constantly reviewing what kind of provision is available and where are the gaps. So it's not necessarily a consolidated programme. I think it's an ongoing piece of work where we'll engage with those partners that we need to at a point in time. Sorry.
Councillor Hawler.
Question 24. 4.72. The complexity of young people and their families as they escalate through the process also creates barriers to access to the community support. Are we seeing a trend of complex cases presenting? Does this in turn make us more difficult to provide sources of appropriate interventions in the communities, for example, support of young people that may have neurodiversities?
Thanks, Councillor. And again, I think this goes back to the point that Beth made earlier, is that there are community provisions out there. However, we need to make sure that the people running those groups have the skill set to deal with the complex young people that are coming through the strike process and that are coming through the hub, and that in itself is a barrier for that young person engaging in more mainstream provision. So I think it's where you need a specialist member of staff try to support a young person to stay with them for a while to attend these sessions, and then pull back, or need to look at more bespoke interventions. We are seeing neurodivergent cases coming through quite a lot. It's featuring quite heavily in our referrals to complex families as well as community safety. I know there are a lot of community-based groups looking at this. On my Facebook recently, there's, I think, 3 groups that I've seen set up with parents with children with ND support needs, and they're now meeting as a group of parents and they're talking and they're supporting each other and learning from each other. So I think those things are out there. I think the point I made in my report is more around the type of young people that we see in community safety, and not the type of people that you could say, oh, go to CCYP, go and play rugby. They need that extra level of support to start engaging in community provisions.
Okay. A final question, Councillor Hawler.
This is about 6.2. Community safety intervention is such mentoring is a positive future for the whole reliance of grant funding currently shared prosperity funding, which ends in March of 26. What mitigations are being planned should no other funding options be available? Thank you.
I take that one. Yeah, so myself, Kath, and the Manager for Health, Sports and Wellbeing, we identified this as a risk some months ago and have looked for solutions. So I'm comfortable that we won't see an end to that funding. SBF is a huge loss in terms of what it's currently providing. So we haven't looked at what else could replace those 2 areas. We've looked at trying to find alternative grants, and I'm making some progress on that. So that's where we are with those 2 elements.
Thank you. Okay. Members, would you like to put forward any recommendations at this point before officers, the Executive Member and Inspector Sacho leaves the meeting? No? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank our Executive Member, officers and Inspector Sacho from Gwent Police. Do you have any comments before leaving the meeting? No? You're free to go. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Members, can I please remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and still being webcast. Can I refer you now to the scrutiny activity and invite you to offer your recommendations.
Members, would you like me to quickly run through the scrutiny activity for your session today? So, in answering your key question, the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee is invited to review the information provided and the responses to your questions today, and to determine whether the realignment of the service to the EIP delivery is having a positive impact, to assess whether the development and evolution of community-delivered response will continue to see improvements in reducing community safety issues in the borough, and then to provide your comments and recommendations for further areas of improvement to the Executive Member for Corporate Governance and Performance, and also the Executive Member for Communities, as they come into both remits now.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I've probably got two, whether they can be recommendations or sort of comments. Well, the one part is when they collect all the relevant data, is it possible for it to be brought back to the committee for us to work out whether the data catching is relevant and it's doing the work that they intend to do with that data for the intervention and prevention? And the other thing is I picked up on is where they're engaged with the community venues and all, and they're looking to integrate with third parties, they're not 100%, they've got a legitimate list at the moment. So when they have got that list, would it be possible to bring it back for us to look at again? Because it might be something that we could share as members locally within our community. So that might be more of a comment than a recommendation.
Yes, so with regards to your first point on collecting data, obviously you will receive a full suite of data when you conduct your visioning exercise, so you would hope to see that data there for you to reflect on then. And of course there is the wider EIP report that will be coming before your scrutiny in April, but that obviously will consider the whole early intervention and prevention system that is now in place. Sorry, can I just clarify on your second recommendation there? So what the list that you mentioned about third parties, was that in relation to a specific piece of work they're doing, or was it the community?
Yeah, it was in one of the questions that somebody asked, and they said, Bethan sort of said there that they're making a list up at the moment to see what provision they've actually got. So for me, that just shows they haven't got a full list at the moment. They just don't know what they got and how they're going to use it. That's what I was picking up on. So whether that's a recommendation, we could bring it back for us to look at the revised and proper list. But yeah, there was definitely a question that somebody asked, and I can't remember which part of the question it was. I'll find it in a minute and I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about popping out earlier. It was something I just had to do. Well, personally, I think it's probably a bit early to say whether this approach with the EIP hub is actually working. It's probably too early, I would say, to suggest it's a good thing. I mean, it looks like being a good thing, don't get me wrong. But I think it's probably too early to make a sort of proper judgment. The other thing I would say, and I wouldn't know how to word it really, is that we do really need to look into the funding of some of these into these groups, because I think it's vitally important, as Councillor Hall has said about the service up in Glenavon. It is vital these groups, are sustainable. So whether we recommend setting up a working party or something similar to look in at how these groups can, be funded, or apply for extra resources as and when. I'm not sure how exactly it would work, but can you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's around, I suppose, ensuring sustainability, isn't it, of these community groups, because they are supporting us in our work. So, yeah, no problem. I'll put that into a recommendation, and perhaps you can then get back to me on the wording of how you'd like that to be amended.
Yeah. I mean, if we were sort of, recommending a kid to take up rugby or football or something, could that child apply for, have his subs paid, or a grant for boots or kit or something like that? Either that or fund the group to take a level of kids who couldn't afford it otherwise, if you know what I mean. Do you see what I'm saying? There are different funding mechanisms, I would imagine. But,
So
yeah.
I think Kath did mention about there is help out there to cover costs, and there's community kit works, etc. But yeah, no, I appreciate your point about exploring the wider implications of funding difficulties on voluntary groups and for people to take part in it. So like you suggested, perhaps a working group, or somehow when they're reviewing their processes, that they can take that more into consideration. But yeah, I've noted that down as a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Slade.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, only going back to looking on the question you asked on 22 and 23 about the provision. So, I mean, that's probably something on similar lines with what Alan was saying and with the funding. Unless we know what's out there, we don't know what we're going to fund and whether it's relevant to what we need. So that's what I'm looking at around the question 23.
Okay, yeah, so that was around, that gap analysis and reviewing. Yeah, no, right, thank you, Councillor Evans.
We talked about neurodivergency. Within it, they say that they have a small allocation of people within that. Is it something that they should be looking at more? Because of the nature of people that are coming through that are more exposed into neurodivergencies? Is it a case now that they should put a little bit more into it for that? Does that make sense? Secondly, should the committee get told about funding options long term for their preservation after March and all that? And I kind of get that this has been a really interesting meeting this morning. Would it be good for a seminar to go out to the group, to the whole of members, to be able to discuss what these guys are doing? Because they are doing a good job. It's not as they're not doing a good job, but there's only 4 of us around the table today that understood that, and there is 40 of us that could potentially come to a seminar. So could we have some form of seminar with information moving forward on what they're doing, how they're doing it, what their outcomes are, and for them to blow the trumpet, because they are doing a good job.
Thank you. Yes, so with regard to the funding, perhaps I could put that on the action sheet for perhaps members to get a briefing, rather than that be fed back through another scrutiny session. You could just have an update briefing on that funding that will cease at the end of March. Thank you.
Councillor Slade. Your mic's off, Councillor.
Yeah.
You're on a schoolboy errand again now.
Another one. I wish it was a schoolboy. No, I think perhaps more could be done to advertise the Torfaen Connect website, because there is a massive amount of information on there. Just recently I was looking for dog training, because I'm getting a dog. So, and there are, loads and loads of groups out there. If I don't feel perhaps we're advertising the website, the Torfaen Connect, well enough, perhaps. It is worth having a look at it, having a little nose. That was all. That's my comment. And
that it's a resource of information, because a lot of people, when I've mentioned it, don't actually know what is it. What's Connect? I know. So it's also, informing people what that is about. So I think that's a good idea. Yeah. I was amazed how how diverse the activities were on there. Like I said, from sort of dog training to old time dancing to keep fit for over 60s, which I had a little think about, but that's as far as it went.
As long as you don't meet all them criteria, that.
Yeah. But yes, it needs advertising more, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I didn't know if you wanted to add to that. Obviously, I know it's police run, but Inspector Stacho said about that Neighbourhood Matters app that they're developing, so perhaps when that's ready, obviously you've got a good cohort of people in your community and you can support getting that message out as well, and the exec member could do some on that as well. Yeah. If
I could come in rather than raise my hand, the only other point I picked up is when we asked a question about substance misuse. They gave a roundabout answer rather than, it seems to be younger and younger people seem to be involved with a lot of this. So, you know, we perhaps need a bit more information, I would say, around age groups and how we're dealing with it. Because it's not all adults now, it's starting to be young children on vapes and everything else, so...
If I could,
I don't know whether it were something like that.
Well, if I can come in quickly there, Councillor Evans, obviously not to preempt anything that you may decide, but I had spoken to officers outside of the meeting, and obviously that is an emerging issue that they're seeing at the minute. So, and with the CIP being new, they will have more information to give you at visioning. So obviously, as you stand as the Crime and Disorder Committee, as well as the Adults and Communities Committee, substance misuse may be the issue that you decide to focus on next year as this item. So that could be a big item, that an important one that you may want to focus on in your next year as the Crime and Disorder Committee.
Anybody else got any comments?
Thank you, members. So I will formulate those and circulate those later today for you to review and approve.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, agenda item 7, date of the next meeting. The next meeting will be Thursday, the 5th of March 2026 at 10 a.m. I just want to thank you for your attendance and contribution, and I will close the meeting. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you all.